faithfully sharing insights, delving into great books from around the world. Oh, hi, this is Sally with the Book Talk. Today we're diving into the biography of Warren Buffett, the Oracle of Omaha, the Snowball. Warren Buffett is a household name, running one of the most successful investment firms ever. Berkshire Hathaway has repeatedly topped as the world's richest. By April 2020, his personal fortune hit $70.05, exceeding the GDP of many nations. Besides his stock success, Buffett is renowned for charity, pledging to donate 99% of his wealth, and hailed by the media as the Sage of Omaha. The Sage! Every year he auctions off a lunch date with himself, with all proceeds going to charity. Many fork out millions just to dine with him, personally soaking in the aura of the Sage of Omaha. Unlike other financial moguls, Buffett didn't rise to fame on Wall Street. He spent most of his life in Omaha, a small city in the American Midwest. In 2008, Buffett commissioned financial analyst Alice Schroeder to pen his biography, The Snowball, Warren Buffett and the Business of Life. As the authorized biography, it's packed with first-hand accounts from Buffett, his kin, and pals, delving deep into the Oracle's life story and mindset. We'll break down this book into two parts, the first and second episodes. Part 1 spans Buffett's childhood to his 40s, showing how he evolved from a shy problem kid into a top-notch stock picker. Part 2 covers Buffett's post-middle-age years. We'll discover how he honed himself after achieving financial independence, ascending from skilled investor to celebrated sage of investing. Today we're on Part 1. I'll dissect it in 3 phases. Phase 1 is his pre-19 years, where Buffett's upbringing and early schooling set the stage for his triumphs. Phase 2 is his young adulthood, ages 19 to 26. Here, Buffett apprenticed under Benjamin Graham, the value investing guru, forging his own unique approach.
Phase 3 is ages 26 to 40, when Buffett went back to his roots, launching ventures and climbing to riches via savvy stock picks.
First up, Phase 1, Buffett's early life before 19. Warren Buffett is of French descent. His ancestors were Huguenots from French Protestantism. In the 17th century, to escape religious persecution, they immigrated to the New World and bought a farm in the East. This family was notoriously stingy. Just how stingy were they? Boys in the family weren't allowed to work outside. They had to stay on the family farm. As cheap labor in 1867, a young man named Sidney Buffett couldn't stand the exploitation and ran away. He came to Omaha, a small city in the Midwest, and opened a grocery store here. He was Sidney Buffett, Warren Buffett's great-grandfather, and Warren's father was Howard. Buffett studied journalism in college and was passionate about politics, but as a grocer's son with low social status, he couldn't land jobs in media or politics. He ended up as an insurance salesman at a bank. In 1929, the year before Warren was born, Wall Street crashed, sparking an economic crisis. Howard lost his job, plunging the family into poverty. Warren Buffett was born on August 30th, 1930. He was the only son with an older sister and later a younger sister. At that time, bank failures wiped out savings. Howard lost half his life savings, and even feeding the family became a struggle. Warren's mother scrimped and saved. Sometimes, to feed her husband and kids, she went hungry herself. This sacrifice was truly heroic, but the hardships caused immense mental strain on Warren's mother, worsened by her family's history of mental illness. This made her mood volatile. She often took it out on the kids, traumatizing Warren and making him withdrawn. When Warren was 4 or 5, the family's finances improved. After unemployment, Howard risked borrowing from friends to start a stock brokerage with a partner. At that time, the U.S. stock market saw an unprecedented crash, and Howard bought at the bottom. In 1932, after Roosevelt became president, he ended the gold standard and rolled out fiscal stimulus, boosting the stock market. The Buffett family then lived a middle-class life. Warren was very introverted from a young age. He didn't like playing outside and loved number-related activities. For example, at church, he collected hymn authors' birth and death dates to calculate their lifespans and compare them to average life expectancy. He found that those who served God didn't live longer than ordinary folks, which made him skeptical of religion. At age 6, young Buffett channeled his love for numbers into making money.
He loved selling gum, soda, and other small goods at crowded spots like stadiums. His dad opened a bank account for him, and watching the balance grow brought him immense satisfaction.
At 10, his father took him to New York, where they visited the New York Stock Exchange. They even met their idol, Sidney Weinberg, the head of Goldman Sachs. Then something unforgettable happened to Warren. Weinberg hugged him and asked, "Warren, what stock do you like?" That question took root in young Buffett's mind ever since. Back home, he picked a stock he liked. Short on cash, he recruited his sister as a partner.
The siblings pooled $114 for the stock. Soon after, it dropped by a third, devastating Warren. This money came from years of soda sales. And worse, it included his sister's savings. His sister constantly reminded him of the falling stock price, piling on the pressure. When it finally broke even, he sold immediately, only to see the stock quintuple afterward.
He later called this one of his most crucial lessons, learning 3 things. First, don't fixate on a stock's purchase cost.
Second, don't rush to grab small profits.
Third, avoid investing others' money. It creates crushing pressure. In 1941, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, dragging the U.S. into World War II. Howard, always politically fervent, decided to run for Congress. A conservative Republican, Howard saw U.S. involvement in WHO as a mistake. American youth shouldn't die for other nations. He also opposed social welfare and labor movements, advocating for capitalist interests, which drew workers' hatred. Still, he courageously campaigned in factories. Warren's main job was to stand guard at the door. When workers threatened his father, he dashed to call the police. Howard faced harsh criticism during the campaign, yet surprisingly won, shocking his family. Actually, this wasn't entirely unexpected. Nebraska's an agricultural state with few industrial workers among voters and deeply conservative views.
In the 2016 presidential election, the state voted for Trump too.
In 1942, newly elected Congressman Howard Buffett moved to Washington, D.C. for his term. 12-year-old Warren transformative resolve. Warren transferred schools, but struggled as an introverted newcomer. He became a troubled teen, skipping classes, shoplifting, lying, until his father threatened to cut off support, pushing him toward financial independence. Warren read a book called 1,000 Ways to Make $1,000. It taught him compound interest, using money to generate more money. Inspired, he launched small ventures, most famously with pinball machines. These machines were common outside U.S. stores then, like claw machines of that era. Buffett bought a used machine for $25, negotiated with a barber to place it for waiting customers, and split profits. With earnings, he bought a second machine, rapidly scaling to 4, then 8. Eventually, he partnered with every barbershop in nearby towns. Through pinball, Warren first grasped the magic of exponential growth. Even today, this remains an exceptional business model. At just 17, Buffett achieved financial independence, covering all expenses and saving nearly $10,000 extra. In 1949, Buffett's father lost his re-election bid. Returning home, Warren witnessed shifting loyalties after his father's political fall, suddenly understanding the importance of connections. In 1950, Buffett graduated from the University of Nebraska and planned for grad school. To join elite business circles, he applied to Harvard Business School, confident his young age and money-making secrets guaranteed admission.
But he was wrong.
Harvard aimed to cultivate mature leaders, not just profit-driven individuals. Recalling his Harvard interview scene, Buffett said, "I looked about 16 but acted like 9. After 10 minutes, the interviewer decided to shut me out." After Harvard rejected him, Buffett had to try other schools. When he flipped through Columbia University's admissions brochure, he saw a familiar name, Benjamin Graham, the master of value investing, would teach a stock investment course at Columbia Business School. Buffett loved Graham's book, The Intelligent Investor. Rereading it many times, he immediately wrote to Columbia, expressing admiration for Graham and applying to be his student. The admissions director, who happened to be Graham's friend, was moved by the letter's passion.
Despite missing the application deadline, Buffett was still admitted.
From then on, he followed Graham onto the path of a professional investor. Looking back at Buffett's childhood and youth, his personality was influenced by both his father and mother. His father's career introduced him early to buying stocks and the concept of compound interest, helping him earn his first fortune. From his mother, he learned perseverance and hard work. Meanwhile, his mother's emotional issues fostered his introverted nature. In his student years, he was fortunate to find Benjamin Graham as a mentor, launching his brilliant career as a stock investor. Now to the second phase, Buffett's youth from 19 to 26. His late application meant no dorm room, so he stayed at a YMCA hostel. As mentioned, Buffett wasn't religious. He joined the group for cheap lodging, 10 cents a day per room versus $1 elsewhere. He wasn't poor. Besides savings from business ventures, he had a $500 scholarship. But after grasping compound interest, he saw $1 today as potentially hundreds in the future, every cent like a snowflake that could roll into a snowball. So he decided to save wherever possible, investing every penny he saved. At Columbia, Graham taught the introductory finance course, which was mandatory. Many students attended the lectures, mainly focused on company valuation, but most didn't really understand or were uninterested. Most of them became executives at big companies after graduation. Besides Buffett, no one wanted stock investing as a career, so only he actively engaged with Graham in class. The teacher and student often had Q&A sessions, turning the class into a duet between them. In Graham's class, Buffett learned 3 main principles. First, buying a stock means acquiring a share of ownership in a company. To exercise this right, you must understand the company itself. Second, establish a margin of safety to avoid losses. To keep your principal growing, first ensure it doesn't decline. Third, Mr. Market is your servant, not your master. Graham imagined a moody character called Mr. Market, who daily sets irrational prices, repeatedly offering chances to buy low and sell high.
But your value judgment shouldn't be swayed by Mr. Market's emotions.
In other words, don't trade solely due to price moves. Every buy or sell should be value-based. Buffett agreed with most of Graham's ideas, but they differed on the second principle about margin of safety.
Graham's method for margin of safety was cigar butt investing, meaning extracting the last bit of value from discards.
The essence of this method is buying low-priced stocks below net asset value during extreme market panic. These stocks are like discarded cigar butts. Most can still be puffed a few times, but some are rotten, and their prices can plunge to zero, causing principal loss. So in Graham's portfolio, each stock holding was tiny, using extreme diversification for margin of safety. This ties to his personal history. Graham rose in the 1930s when the U.S. economy was poor, with many firms near collapse, making him risk-averse. In his view, every company could go bankrupt, so he valued them based on liquidation price. But Buffett believed that by thoroughly understanding a company, you can build margin of safety without forced diversification. So he often invested heavily in a single stock. Learning in Graham's classroom. After learning a lot about investing, Buffett still wanted to work with his mentor for a while.
But before that, Buffett returned to his hometown Omaha to settle a major life event.
He got married, and the bride was Susan, daughter of his father's old friend, Dr. Thompson. Buffett and Susan's union felt somewhat arranged, as their core values differed greatly. Buffett came from a Republican conservative family, while Susan was a typical Democratic liberal, passionate about civil rights, and had many minority friends. At the time, Susan was dating a Jewish boy, but her parents wouldn't allow her to marry a minority. So while her boyfriend was away at school, they broke up the couple and hastily arranged her marriage to Buffett.
Mm-hmm.
That at that time, Buffett was 21, Susan only 19. They went to Las Vegas for their honeymoon, but Susan wasn't old enough to gamble legally. Despite not spending much time together before marriage, their married life was still happy. Buffett was very satisfied with his wife. He wrote to elders, saying he'd fallen in love with an incomparable girl whose only flaw was not understanding stocks. Susan was a devoted wife and mother, caring for family life meticulously, and also became a key bridge for Buffett in developing relationships. In 1954, Buffett moved to New York with his wife Susan and newborn daughter, joining Graham's investment firm. Though earning well, Buffett didn't change his frugal nature. He rented a very cheap apartment. When the family moved in, it wasn't habitable yet, so they stayed temporarily in a friend's small room for 2 days. There was no crib, so Buffett put his daughter in a drawer for the night. This incident later became famous. People said Buffett was so cheap he made his daughter sleep in a drawer. Buffett's job at Graham's firm was to sift through data of all listed companies daily, finding those with stock prices below liquidation value. Buffett worked very hard and quickly became a key asset to the company. At the same time, he also discovered differences between himself and his mentor. Graham saw investing as an intellectual test. His ultimate goal wasn't to make money, but to prove his intelligence. Buffett didn't see it that way. His sole goal in buying stocks was to make money, and he realized that sometimes it's simple. No overthinking needed. For instance, Graham invested in a chocolate company. At the time, soaring cocoa bean prices tanked its profits, sending its stock to rock bottom. Graham discovered the company's warehouses were packed with cocoa beans. Their value exceeded the company's entire market cap. So he struck a deal with major shareholders, buy shares at market price, then exchange them for proportionate cocoa beans.
Since cocoa was pricier per unit than the stock, selling the beans guaranteed arbitrage profits.
Buffett handled this operation per Graham's orders, but realized earning money didn't need to be so complicated. For his personal investment, he just bought the stock and held on to it.
The logic was simple. Investors like Graham swapping shares for beans meant the major shareholder was essentially repurchasing stock using cocoa inventory.
This shrank outstanding shares, and after liquidating the beans, the company's finances looked stellar. Plus, scarce shares made price surges easy. Buffett knew the major shareholder well, an ambitious guy who'd actively pump the stock. Turns out Buffett was right. Post-liquidation, the stock doubled. Buffett scored a 100% return, while Graham's arbitrage gained just 7%. Here, Graham's approach was classic cigar butt investing, valuing the stock at liquidation price. But Buffett's thinking diverged sharply. He believed even near-bankrupt firms could pivot by acquiring other businesses if they had cash reserves. Thus, his valuation still exceeded liquidation price. This resembles China's A-share market, shell company, concept. But Buffett didn't just buy shells, he deeply understood the business before investing. Despite his introversion, determined, Buffett networked relentlessly with business elites, winning their trust with knowledge to access non-public intel. Graham, however, resisted this approach. He refused to build personal ties with company executives, seeing it as akin to insider trading. Yet, this disagreement didn't harm their close bond. In 1956, the 62-year-old Graham decided to retire, hoping Buffett would become a partner and inherit his business. Unexpectedly, Buffett declined. Though Buffett admired Graham, he didn't want to be anyone's successor. He also disliked settling in New York, finding Wall Street's atmosphere restrictive. At 26, Buffett returned to his hometown Omaha, determined to build his investment career with his unique approach. Looking back at Buffett's youth from 19 to 26, Graham guided him into professional investing, teaching value analysis, margin of safety, and avoiding market sentiment. Well, these were core skills, but Buffett didn't blindly follow his mentor's cigar butt system. He resolved to deeply understand each company he invested in, uncovering hidden value others missed. This approach became key to his future success. Now to phase 3, Buffett's entrepreneurial years from 26 to 40. In 1956, he moved his family back to Omaha. By then, he'd saved $174,000, roughly $1.64 today, enough to retire comfortably. But Buffett wasn't satisfied. Now an experienced investor, he could start a firm and manage others' money. However, the childhood lesson from investing his sister's money still haunted him. He knew he lacked mental toughness. If partners criticized him during downturns, he might buckle under pressure and sell prematurely. So he decided to only accept those who trusted him completely and would never blame him as partners. His first investors included his father, Howard Buffett, father-in-law, Dr. Thompson, college roommate, childhood friends, and their families. On May 1st, 1956, Buffett Associates Limited officially launched in Omaha, operating from Buffett's home. The house was tiny and rented. Buffett refused to buy property, believing every penny could snowball into future wealth. Only after his wife had their third child did he buy a house, which he called Buffett's Folly, seeing home buying as foolish investing. In the 1950s, it was unusual, even in America, for a college grad to skip big corporate jobs and start a business at home, especially in Omaha, a small town where most locals knew zilch about stocks. The English word security for seculate also means safety.
So many folks thought Buffett sold burglar alarms. Thankfully, he had a wife who backed him unconditionally.
Susan not only created a quiet workspace for Buffett, but also managed his social calendar. The couple quickly blended into Omaha's high society, and some wealthy pals they met became Buffett's early investor mentors. After Graham officially retired, he also referred some big clients to Buffett. As his investment gains soared and his rep grew, out-of-town millionaires started seeking him out. They asked him to handle their investments. For each new batch of big funds raised, Buffett set up a separate investment firm. By 1961, he managed 11 such firms. Basically, he launched 11 private funds. During the day, he'd hit the library to read papers and biz mags, staying on top of industry news. Back home, he'd scour listed company manuals, pick promising firms, drive out for on-site checks, and go all in once he spotted a target. Buffett never diversified his holdings. That was his key difference from Graham. But in picking investments, Buffett was still swayed by cigar butt investing, always buying troubled companies below liquidation price for a comeback. Now let's dive into 2 success stories to see Buffett's style back then.
First up, National Fire Insurance Company of America. A fancy name, but really just a struggling small outfit.
In 1919, right after WW1, with few good investments around, many farmers got duped by salesmen into buying this stock at $100 a share. But the company had no solid biz. Its stock was illiquid, unsellable, so folks just locked it away in drawers. When Buffett found this firm, in the listed company manual, many small shareholders had died or long forgotten about it.
At the time, the stock price was $30, down 70% from over 30 years earlier.
But Buffett discovered this company's earnings per share hit $29, with a price-to-earnings ratio near 1, meaning its business had miraculously recovered. Through deeper investigation, Buffett uncovered the reason behind it. Turns out, the Harmonson family, an American insurance dynasty, was quietly accumulating shares while transferring their premium insurance business to the company. Buffett sent agents to rural towns, waving cash on the spot, asking who owned National Fire Insurance stock. Hearing this worthless paper gathering dust could finally be cashed, farmers were ecstatic. Of course, some tried to jack up prices too.
Ultimately, Buffett bought 10% of the company at $60 per share average, flipping it for $125 each, earning over 100% profit.
The second example is American Express, now a famous U.S. financial services giant. But in the 1950s, it was just a traveler's check company entangled in fraud. unintentionally endorsing a fraudster in the scandal, helping him scam bank loans.
Actually, American Express was also a victim here.
But scammed banks demanded compensation from them. To make matters worse, a black swan event struck then. President Kennedy was assassinated. Stocks plummeted, and American Express halved within days. Everyone thought bankruptcy loomed, but Buffett disagreed.
He visited hotels, banks, and agencies, discovering travelers' checks were booming, and Amex remained the most trusted brand.
Based on this, Buffett went all in on American Express, investing a third of his managed funds, $13 million total, a massive gamble. Just then, Buffett's personal life shattered. His father died. For years, Howard Buffett had tirelessly backed his son's career, serving as Warren's early anchor. American Express stock kept falling post-purchase. Combined with grief, Buffett developed severe insomnia and hair loss, balding significantly by his 30s. A few years later, in 1967, after paying hefty settlements, American Express finally shook off the lawsuits. Business normalized, profits surged, and the stock skyrocketed to $180, tripling from its low, becoming another classic Buffett investment. These were success stories. Buffett also had failures during this phase. In 1962, a friend tipped Buffett about a Massachusetts textile firm selling below asset value, a classic cigar butt company. Buffett's initial plan was to buy it, dismantle it quickly, and cash out. But he underestimated the difficulty. Influenced by his father's conservative views, Buffett focused solely on capital and shareholders, underestimating worker power.
Dismantling required mass layoffs, triggering fierce opposition from workers, management, and local media.
Under political pressure, Buffett couldn't execute his plan.
Now he tried selling the whole company, but found no takers. What started as a quick flip forced him into becoming a major shareholder.
That company was Berkshire Hathaway.
Overall, Buffett's early career succeeded brilliantly. By carefully selecting trusted investors, he avoided external interference, enabling bold bets on turnaround companies. But one flaw remained. His influence was limited, lacking clout to sway companies decisively. For instance, National Fire Insurance's revival was driven by the Harmansons. Buffett just rode coattails. When he had to save a company single-handedly, like Berkshire Hathaway, he often failed. Entering middle age, Buffett grew disillusioned with his career. He wrote to partners, feeling out of sync with market conditions. Then he dropped a bombshell. He'd shutter the partnership in 1970 and retire. Retirement meant ending the partnership model, not quitting investing.
At 40, Buffett aimed higher, driven by a pivotal figure, his friend Charlie Munger.
In the next episode of The Snowball, we'll explore how Buffett partnered with Munger to refine his investment approach, elevate his reputation, and transform Berkshire Hathaway from a failed holding into an investment empire. All right, that wraps up our discussion of The Snowball Part 1. Check the show notes below the audio. We'll see you next time.